weekend before,
last time on Strict,
I left her this letter, and it's very personal.
Whoa, sorry if I ain't perfect, sorry I don't give a what? Sorry I ain't a diva, sorry just know what I want. Strict.
That was probably one of the hardest letters I ever had to write. Like, it really was. And you know, here I am a year later and it still kills me because I don't know what it was, but I felt like I was gonna lose her if something happened. And you have to understand, like, the way my mom died, it was not the first time she got behind the wheel of a car and drove drunk. It was not. It was probably the 10th or 11th or 12th time. It was not the first. So regardless of how you believe, if you believe in God or if you believe in whatever, then, you know, that's, I just feel like, you know, and I've had someone come up before and be like, how can you think this was God's doing because God does good and he's putting you to this? No, I think God was like, Alexa, you've done this enough. And I think he was like, you know, and I can't speak for that because I don't, you know, I just can't, but I just think God has a plan, and I think that's how that was supposed to lay out, because I'm telling you, this happened many times. So anyway, so that happened, and unfortunately, you know, I sit there and I think I left this on her car. I think that I thought it was going to be a good thing and thought it was going to be a lot better, and it actually went the opposite way. She thought I was looking down on her, and I think she just took it as the defensive, and I think part of it was because she knew I was right, and it just kind of didn't help. And so that week, I didn't talk to her until Wednesday, when Greg and I had been talking about getting engaged, and he had told me, you know, he was like, I want you to pick out the ring. There's so much I want to spend. I want you to pick out the ring. So, excuse Xander. So we went, or I was like getting out of school, or I went to school today, and I was like, who can I call? I thought about calling Holly. I thought about calling my friend Caitlin. I thought about calling, you know, someone else, and I was like, no, like, I want my mom there. And I think this was just, if I had not gotten my mom to go with me that day, I would have been kicking myself today. I wouldn't have. I think that was the one little piece that I got that has helped me through this whole wedding process. So I called her, I texted her, and I still have the text to this day, and she was like, I was like, you want to go to Jared and look at rings? We did, and we went and looked, and the fact that she got to see my ring was so special. So, you know, I'd gotten out of school that day, I skipped my last class. One time that was okay to skip class, and I went and we looked at the ring, and then we went to TJ Maxx afterwards, which was one of our really special things to do. And I feel like this was one of our last outings, and it's so special because it's one of the last memories I have of her. And sorry guys. No, it's funny because she never would buy anything for herself. It was always for Miller, for me, and there were these I'd gotten, you know, TJ Maxx, I'd gotten like all this other stuff, and then we went to the counter where the jewelry was, and there was a gold one of these rings, which is the Michael Kors, it's not gonna focus, but the Michael Kors like buckle rings. And I was like, Mom, they have a silver one, and she always got silver jewelry, and so I was like, you should get a silver one and I'll get a gold one. And she was like, no, and so I put something back and got that for her. And so I got it, and I got the gold one, and I didn't think much of it. She was like, thank you, and I was like, oh, no problem, I'm really excited that I got it for you. And so that happened, and then the rest of the week is kind of a blur. That weekend I had like a father-daughter like weekend, and my dad and I went to Chili Fights, which is this big thing. And it's funny because I thank God they had it earlier this year, so like we had it 2 weekends ago, because it would have killed me if we had it the same weekend. But anyway, so we go, and I babysat that night. And this is the weird thing, and this is where things are so weird how things led up to this, because it's like there was something supernatural trying to let me know that this big change is about to happen. So my dad and I went to a football game that Friday night, And if you remember my Instagram pictures, which some people do, it was the night I wore, it was the first night I ever wore that gray headband with the big bow on it. It was like a knitted headband with a big bow on it. It was freezing, and we actually passed my mom's house, and my dad made a comment and was like, she does not look good. Like, she just does not look good. And I knew, and I just didn't want to say anything. And so, I'm sorry. I know I keep wiping my nose. It probably seems so gross to you guys. I'm sorry. But anyway, so we go to that game that night, and then Saturday we went to Chili Fights, and then I went and babysat. And that night, the kids went to sleep, and I was up because my dad I know this is weird details, but this is just what I remember. My dad and I went garage selling that morning, and I found one of those Mophie cases for your iPhone, one that charges it, for like 25 cents. So I got it, but I didn't have the charger to actually charge the case. So I took it with me babysitting because I knew it would like keep my phone charged if I didn't have a charger. So Greg, the kids went to sleep, and I was sitting there trying to charge my phone. It was almost dead, and Greg was house sitting at this house out in the middle of nowhere, and he thought someone was trying to break in. And I'm freaking out, and I text my mom, and I'm like, are you awake? Because I didn't know what to do. I ended up where Greg called the cops because he thought someone was trying to break in. Cops came out, checked the place out, but this place has been broken into before, so that's why he thought that. And my mind just got on the fact of if I lost Greg, if Greg got murdered, if Greg died, what would I do? And I was just thinking about death, and I texted my mom, and I was like, are you awake? She didn't respond. So Greg was okay. The next day, my dad's like, let's go to a movie. He wanted to go see Captain Phillips. So my mom called me, and she was like, hey, did you call me last night? And I was like, yeah, Greg, there was an issue with Greg, and I needed to talk to someone. So I called you, and she was like, oh, okay. And she's like, well, what are you doing today? And I remember I had to film videos, and I was being such a brat, and I was like, Dad wants me to go to a movie with him, but I don't want to go, and he always wants me to do everything on his time. And I was being such a brat. And she's like, well, do you want to go to church with me? And I was like, no, I have to go to this dang movie with Dad. So that was the last time we talked normally. And for a long time, I sat there and thought, well, maybe if I went to church with her, she wouldn't have died. That literally haunted me forever. But I got over that. So then, I go to see Captain Phillips with my dad. And if you've ever seen Captain Phillips, it's Tom Hanks in it. It's the thing, like, based on the true story where the guy gets abducted or whatever from, like, they get pirates take over the ship, whatever. Well, at the end of the movie, he goes into shock, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know what going into shock would be like. That's so crazy. Like, I don't know how that would happen. And little did I know, like, 2 hours later I'd be going through the same thing. So I go and I drop my dad off at the house, and I get a call from my mom, and she's like, Brian, which is her fiance, she's like, Brian and I got in an argument. Will you go to the house and get my stuff? I can't stay there. Well, you know, them getting in an argument, or my mom getting in an argument with anyone and getting over dramatic about it, it was not a big deal. And so it was just, it always happened. And so I was like thinking it was normal. And I go, and I remember I just, this was the part I didn't want to get into. So I go, Mom, no, you're drunk, because she was drunk, and she was on pills and stuff. And I was like, Mom, I can't help you, we're not doing this. And I was like, go get help, please go get help. And I hung up the phone, and that was the last thing I ever said to her. And, you know, that part killed me for a really long time. At the last time I talked to my mom, it wasn't saying I love you, it wasn't saying anything, it was go get help. And it didn't end on a good term, and that killed me for a really, really long time. And that was something I just had to get over on my own, and I did eventually, and I hope you guys don't comment and go, Alexa, that wasn't your fault, because I know it's not my fault, and I've taken months to deal with it, and I forgot I had a box of tissues down there. So that night, I went home, and I had to take a test for school, and I remember that I sat down to take the test, and I tried calling my mom over and over, and she kept pushing ignore. And so I just gave up. I was like, and I called Greg on the way home from my dad's after the whole phone call, and I was like, you know, it's up to her now. I really can't. I can't use my energy to try to save her. She's an adult. I can't. And so I get home, you know, and I get in a good place, and that's when I recorded the video. And the video I'm talking about, I'll link it down below, it was a message about addiction, and I was just broken. I felt like, oh, Xander just scared the crap out of me. I didn't know I forgot he was still here. You would have thought that I was going through a breakup on how hard it hurt, or how much it hurt me that my mom and I weren't close at the moment. It really just, it broke me. And sometimes I've thought back and I've wondered, maybe, you know, maybe we became not so close those last couple days so that me being without my mom was a little bit easier. It was not easy at all. So maybe it would just be a fraction easier. I don't really know what the deal was, but so I'm sitting there and I see Mom pop up on my phone, and I feel like this whole video is me crying. I'm so sorry. But I think this is the first time I've ever like relayed the story completely to someone. So my phone pops up and it says Mom, and I answer it thinking that it's just gonna be another fight, and I was like, hello, and it was a man, and I was like, what is the man doing having my mom's phone? He was like, is this Alexa? And I was like, yes. And he goes, how do you know Miss Erin, you know? And I was like, I'm her daughter. And he was like, well, you know, your mom's been in an accident, and it was the worst words you could ever hear on a phone. And he was like, no. And I started crying like I am right now, and he was like, no, she's gonna be okay. And that to this day still infuriates me, and I know they have their job, and I know they have to say stuff like that so that, you know, I wasn't driving upset or anything like that. But I left this apartment thinking my mom was still alive, and she wasn't. So I called my dad, I called Greg, I called Holly. Holly had seen the road blocked off, and she's like, I'm sure it's not your mom. I can't see, but I'm sure it's not your mom. And it was. Greg was like, just call me. My dad was like, I'll be there in just a second. Let me come get you. So my dad comes and gets me, and the entire drive to the hospital, I'm like, I'm gonna get so mad at her. Why is she doing this? It was just pure anger. And I get there, and they tell him, and they take us to this back room, and I know what this back room is for, because it's the same room they took me to tell me my grandma died too, like 6 months later. So we go, no one's not saying anything. I see cops walking around my mom's purse. God, that killed me. But I had no idea she was dead. I had no idea. I just thought, you know, maybe because she'd been drinking, they were angry, they were, you know, there was legal trouble, like, I didn't know. So Brian's already in there, my mom's fiance at the time, and he's just pacing back and forth. He's like, I don't know, they won't tell me anything, yada yada yada. And so my dad and I are sitting there, we're just trying to figure out what's going on. You know, as this happens, Miller's, you know, 12 hours away in Corpus Christi, Texas, and, you know, I'm like, we cannot let Miller know Mom got in an accident. We do not need to let him know what happened until we know for sure what happened. So all this stuff happened. So anyway, finally the doctors come in, and the guy gets on my level, or he's like, who's the daughter? And I'm like, that's me. Gets on my level, looks me in the eye, and says, your mom is dead. It's not like in the movies at all where they pull you aside and they're nice about it or anything. It was just blunt. Your mom is dead. I remember Brian flying that way, my dad flying that way, a wail that I had never heard my father make, ever. It breaks my heart just thinking about it. Brian cried. I just sat there. I was waiting for the punchline, honestly. I was just waiting for it to be a joke. I was waiting for him to just be like, just kidding, her leg's just broken or something. So at that point, I don't remember much. I do remember walking straight out of the room and yelling, "Get me the F out of here," which I don't cuss very often, but I remember that. I remember sitting outside my dad said I wanted to walk away, which this hospital was not in the best part of town. I called Greg, and Greg was like, "You've got to be kidding me. This isn't true, this isn't true." So I get the phone and I call Holly, and Holly gets there, and you know, I hug her, and it was just all so bad. So it was such a blur. If you ever think you're prepared to hear that your mom or your dad died, you're not. Regardless of if you can't stand each other or what it is, you're never ready for it. And it literally broke me. It broke me in more ways than I ever knew it could break me. And I'm still finding out how it broke me. There's still so many ways I find out daily that it broke me that I didn't even know. So what happened is my mom that night, she had a blood alcohol level of 1.43. Anyone that knows what 143 stands for, you can find the irony in that one. But she was inebriated and she backed out of the parking spot. She was going to the hospital's inpatient rehab center, and she was intoxicated and she was going to get help. She got spooked at the last moment and she left inebriated, so she backed out, backed forward, hit a car, and someone saw her do that, and they decided to follow her out of the parking lot, which spooked her even more. She did not have her seatbelt on, she did not have her headlights on, and she went down the street that I've driven numerous times to try to think if there was anything I could do to save her. But honestly, a teenager texting, someone reaching over and grabbing someone out of their purse could have crossed this line in the middle. She crossed the line in the middle, hit another car head on. Her head went into this windshield and she fell back, and the police found her in her car in the fetal position. She died on impact. The one thing I wanted to know after all of it was if she died instantly and if she was ever in any, if she was ever in any kind of pain, and she wasn't. That was probably the biggest blessing in all of it, because if I had known that my mom sat there in a car and suffered, I would have beat myself up over it. I did see the car after the fact, which I wanted to, and I've always known that seatbelts are a really big deal. I've always been told that. It's always been a situation where I've never had to think about putting my seatbelt on, but if my mom had worn her seatbelt, she would have been here today. You could have asked any policeman on that scene and they would have said that. And I had to go through this situation of pulling my own mom's hair out of the windshield of her car. At the age of 22 years old, I had to go through her car and see different spots of where her head hit that windshield and where her makeup hit her face with her makeup hit the airbag. No 22-year-old should ever have to go through that. I had to go through calling my brother and telling him that our mother had died. The fact that I had to break my brother's world drove me crazy, but I knew I had to be the one to do it. Miller and I have always been there for each other. He was the one that whenever my mom and my stepdad or my mom and my dad would fight, I would make him listen to my headphones so he wouldn't have to hear it. And if anyone was gonna sit there and break that innocence for him, I knew I had to be it, because I had to make sure he was gonna be okay. I had to make sure he wasn't gonna do anything drastic, and the fact that he was that many hours away, like, it just broke me. I remember I went home and I made my dad take Xander because, you know, we got to go see my mom in bed, and I was scared because I was scared she was going to be bloodied up, and she wasn't. She looked peaceful, and when I say my mom was my best friend, I truly mean it. It's not even just like when girls sit there and say, oh yeah, my mom's my best friend. My mom knew my darkest secrets. She knew all my doubts. She knew all my accomplishments. She knew everything. And I had to sit there and look at her dead in a bed at the age of 49. Because she chose to drink and drive. I'm not saying it's her fault. I'm not saying anything, but it was awful. And just showing how my family is, the first thing we thought about once we knew that my mom was gone, was how was the other person that she hit. And the other person had a broken leg, and I know that's detrimental and I know it's sad, but you know, I'm glad it wasn't worse. The only thing I know about them was that they tried to sue us months later, saying my mom did it on purpose, which sucked. But I've tried to think of it from their point of view, and I probably would try to say the same thing if a drunk driver hit one of my family members. Do I think my mom's a bad person because she was a drunk driver? No. Am I glad that it didn't kill someone else? Yes. I would have felt awful to have someone else's blood on my hands, or my mom's hands, and then automatically on mine. It was just, she looked peaceful in her bed. She didn't look hurt or anything, but I would do anything to have my mom back. I really would. There were months where I was like, I wish God had taken me instead of my mom, so Miller could at least have his mom. My mom always said that I would have somewhere, I would have a platform. I would always be able to help people, and she loved how I helped you guys, and she was so proud of my suicide video last year and everything like that. And I wanted to do this series because I wanted you guys to see this is real. I may come on here and talk about makeup or get all happy and everything like that, but at the end of the day, this is what I'm dealing with. This is my hurt. This is my thing that I deal with every night before I go to bed, every morning when I wake up. And I want y'all to know that regardless of if you're just having a crappy day at school, or you're going through a breakup, or even if you're going through something like you lost someone, it doesn't matter how hard it is or how insignificant it may seem to you. If you're having a hard day, I'm always here. And we all have things we go through, big and small, but all of them seem big to us, and that's okay. I mean, I've had people come to me and be like, you know, I haven't lost my mom, but I've lost my sister, I've lost a boyfriend, or I've lost that. That's all. It all hurts. It all hurts the same way. It doesn't matter how you slice it. It all hurts. And I'm here, you know, and I wanted to share this with you guys because I want you to know I am human, and there is another person on the other side of the screen that hurts and that feels, and there's happy moments and sad moments and confusing moments, and I'm all here. And you know, and I've gone to grief counseling, and I've done all that, and I have a great support system, but regardless of how many times I get help, at the end of the day, it still hurts. I can all day long learn how to handle this stuff, but I'll never learn how to make it go away, because it won't. I mean, heck, even at my birthday last month, I was thinking about what I'd want, and I was like, well, maybe someone will pop out and be like, hey, your mom didn't really die, here she is, you know? And it's just, it's still hard. It's still, whenever I go through my list of people in my mind to call when something exciting happens, my mom's still there. You know, and y'all have heard all the stories of when I got engaged, how my mom was there, and even how I've had, you know, the windows thing, and like all this different stuff. Y'all have heard all these stories, and you know, I'm blessed that she's there in all those ways, but I literally would do anything to have my mom back. You know, I went home that night, and Holly stayed with me, and I just laid on the couch, and unfortunately I picked Hangover 2 or 3 or whatever one was out that time, or this time last year, and the first scene's a funeral scene, and I remember Holly felt awful, and I was just like, no, don't worry about it. And I remember the next morning when I dropped my dad off at the airport and to go get Miller, and I just laid in my bed afterwards and cried so hard it hurt. And just everything in the funeral, and it's just, and the speech I gave at my mom's funeral, and it was just, it's the worst experience I've ever had. It's the most enlightening experience I've ever had. I've become a better person because of it, but I've also gained bad attributes because of it, and it's just been an interesting experience. And coming up on 1 year, I don't know how I'm going to be able to handle it. Luckily, I'm going to be doing a photo shoot that day with Lauren, XOXOLC. I texted her and I was like, there's no one else I'd rather be around, because if there's no one that can make me laugh, it's Lauren. So, but I thank y'all for watching this series with me. I hope in the future I can maybe do some different series like this, and I hope y'all have learned a lot about me. And I mean, you've seen my ugly cry face, so I feel like we're best friends now, and it's just, I feel like I've let a big piece off. I let a big thing off my chest just by sharing it. So, anyway, last words. I love y'all. I love you. I love my mom, and I'm happy that I got to share this with you guys, but I hope that none of you have to go through it. And if, you know, you're fighting with your mom, you're fighting with your dad, you're fighting with anyone, just tell them you love them. You don't know if they're going to be here tomorrow, so tell them you love them. I love all of you. Y'all are all special to me, and remember, I'm always here. So thank you for watching this series. Make sure you subscribe for more videos, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Hey, sweetie, it's Mom. I was calling to see if you made it, or if you're on your way home. If it's raining really bad, and I want you to be really careful. So call me or text me. I love you, bye.